Hi there and welcome you to Distillique, where today we're talking about training, specifically our W4 Infused Spirit course. Now our W4 course used to be known as our Gin and Botanicals course, and yes, the focus is still very much on gin and botanicals in this course. I would say 98% of the content of this course is focused on gin, creating a gin recipe, the different infusion processes and methods, and so on and so forth. Everything to do with gin. The reason why we call it the Infused Spirits course, however, is that these exact same techniques, methodology of infusion, creation of flavor profiles, blending and so forth, those exact same techniques can be applied to other product categories as well. Spiced rum, for instance. If you want to make a spiced rum the traditional way without adding in essences and so forth and flavorants, the way we make a gin is the same way we should therefore make a spiced rum, using either infused distillation, vapor infusion, direct infusion, indirect infusion, vacuum infusion or heated infusion techniques in order to gain those flavors and aromas inside our infused spirit, which, as I said, can be a spiced rum, it can be a flavored rum, it can be a liqueur, it can be a spirit aperitif. All these different product categories are made the same way as a gin. Hence the course has more applications than just making gin. Now, the W4 course is unique in our W courses, predominantly because the C1 Introduction to Distilling course is not a prerequisite for W4. You do not have to do C1 before you do W4. Whereas with W1 fruit-based spirits, W2 grain-based spirits, and W5 high-brix raw material spirits, which is our rum course, for any of those courses, C1 is a prerequisite. You have to do C1 before you can do those courses. In the case of W4, that is not the case. You can just do W4 without doing C1. Why is this different? Because ginning, infusion, has nothing to do with fermentation and distillation. You do not need to know how to make a fermentation and how to distill a spirit product in order to make a gin. Most gins, most craft gins and gins in general in the world are made not by distillers but by producers, purchasing neutral alcohol, purchasing vodka, and turning that into gin, turning that into a flavored spirit. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's common practice, and there is still a lot of skill and talent involved in doing that properly and consistently. But you need less skills, you need less experience in order to achieve that. Whereas a distiller working from fermentation needs to know how to do a starch conversion if they're working with grain, how to make a fermentation, how to distill that fermentation, and then how to turn that into gin. So if you are just going to be a hobby or home distiller that buys in neutral alcohol, buys in vodka from your local liquor store, and then you want to turn that into gin, the W4 course is all that you're going to need. You don't need to do any other training except W4 if that is your goal. Even if you want to go commercial, if you want to be a gin producer, purchasing neutral spirits from a bulk supplier and turning that into gin, then by all means you only need to do W4. It will, however, be beneficial to you to do C1 as well. It's not a prerequisite, but it is recommended to do C1 prior to doing W4. The reason for that is you'll have a broader overview of the entire process. You will understand the process a little bit better. There might be some terminology that in W4, if you haven't done C1, you might not understand as well, things like reflux and so forth. So it is recommended that you first do C1 and then W4, but it is not a prerequisite. Now, each of our courses, each of our W courses has a master principle that we focus on. The reason behind the master principles is that we focus on a technique or a skill set that is predominant or unique to that product category or that category of spirits. And then the idea is that the more training you do, the more of these master principles you master, and you become a better all-round distiller. Now, the master principle of the W4 course is infusion. How to get flavor into the spirit. That is the main master principle. There is also a secondary master principle that is covered, which is blending. blending and sensory analysis that kind of flows together. How do we smell? How do we taste? How do we analyze spirits? How do we decide whether the spirit is good or not? We talk about things like nose blindness, the different types of nose blindness. We also talk about tasting panels, how to use tasting panels in product development and recipe development, also in terms of market research. There's quite a bit in this course that focuses on the commercial side of gin production, because at the moment, worldwide, but especially in South Africa, craft gin or gin in general is a very big thing. It's a big business. South Africa already has 280 unique gin brands, just South African gin brands on the market. So it is a growing marketplace. It's a very competitive marketplace. The reason for, with the competition side of gin, we also incorporated into this course a discussion, or quite a few discussions, but one specific lesson about marketing, making your gin brand stand out from the rest. How can you pivot your techniques and your choices and your the way you make your gin and your location and all kinds of things? How do you pivot that into a marketing story, a marketing technique, a way to grow your brand? How do you make your choices, keeping that in mind? Choosing a raw material, choosing a botanical and so forth, keeping in mind that every choice that you make will contribute or take away from the success of your brand. So that's also discussed at length in this course. Something that might not be of interest to the hobby or home distiller, but who knows, it might inspire you to actually take this a little bit further than hobby home distilling and actually do this commercially. But that's our W4 Infused Spirits course.